Cheers. So, 2 weeks and it has been quite a ride. And the ride is far from over, but I'll get to that in the end. The past 2 weeks have been very educational, and unlike any other diet program, health program I have tried before. The whole question at the center of these 2 weeks was, why do we eat when we eat? And even more importantly, for me as an individual, why do I eat what I eat? In my past struggles with eating, this is something I never really considered. Sure, I often knew that what I was eating might not be the healthiest, and I was also somewhat aware that most of the times what I was choosing to eat was more for emotional reasons than for any other reasons. I never really consciously accepted this idea. I never really knew how to handle this idea. So in week 1 of this challenge, we were not allowed to change anything to our eating pattern. We were not allowed to cut out anything. However, if there was something that previously we had cut out solely by using willpower, we even had to add that back in. So there was no more denying yourself food just using willpower. We basically got to eat everything we wanted or craved during that week. On top of that, we had to start drinking a lot more water each day, around 6 glasses. The real big change for this week, however, was in getting really familiar with your inner dialogue the moment you're deciding what you're going to eat and when you're actually eating something. Having done that for a week made me feel almost schizophrenic, because there was this constant dialogue going on in my head. I got really familiar with what WILDFIT calls the food angel and the food devil, who are constantly fighting for getting me to eat something. Food angel fighting for healthier things, and the food devil fighting for things that tend to have more sugar and stuff like that. Even though you may know that you have these conversations in your head a bit, I had never realized how much I do this and how intense these debates can get when you start to pay attention to it. So every time we were considering something, like I said before, we had to eat it. However, we had to really pay attention and write down these dialogues. 2 major things started to pop out for me after a couple of days. First one is that my food devil often won out just by promising, if you'll eat this food, you will feel a lot better. And once you feel better, then you will have the energy to eat healthy again. So that's a really nasty tactic that I can see, looking back, I have used for a long time to sort of convince myself that I'm being healthy while I'm not being healthy. And the second thing that popped out, which may even be more profound, the foods I was choosing to eat, listening to the food devil, they never made me actually feel better. All these promises of at least having more energy after eating it, at least feeling a bit happier after eating it, this was rarely ever the case. More often than not, I would maybe have a little bump in mood while eating it, and quickly after realize that I was feeling like I had eaten a ton of bricks or worse. Meaning that the foods I'm often using to get more energy and to make myself feel better achieve the opposite result. Yeah, not a great plan. Then came week 2, and surprise, surprise, we were still not allowed to cut out any foods. This initially made me really happy, even though I didn't like to admit that even to myself, because I was kind of dreading removing the foods that I was using to feed myself emotionally. Still not cutting anything out. Perfect. Makes the program a whole lot easier. Instead, this week we were adding foods, and we were adding a lot. First off, every day had to be started with 2 or 3 pieces of fruit, which already was quite a switch for me, since I don't usually eat breakfast besides having a bulletproof coffee. But it's manageable. Fruit is tasty, fruit is sugary, no big deal. The second addition to our diets was adding the Alkalgizer drink in the morning, which is the smoothie I showed you at the start. This is the WILDFIT signature drink, which contains mostly vegetables, and in this iteration, some green apple as well. Now, the good thing is that I've been breaking my fast with smoothies for over a year already, so just pulling this earlier still wasn't really a big deal. Then the third change, which was easily the biggest change for me, but I must say that it still went pretty well for this week, which was we had to add, on top of everything we were already eating, because again, we couldn't cut any food out, and that includes portion size. On top of all of that, and all of the fruit and the Alkalgizer drink, we had to add at least 2 portions of vegetables. Especially coming from the way I was eating before, which was mostly 1 meal a day. This culminated in some pretty big changes, but it was still all manageable. Now, the reasoning behind all of this makes a lot of sense to me as well. Eric explained quite early on in the process that more so than cutting out the bad foods, it's important to have enough of the good foods. One example that he gave was an example where they gave people only healthy, good foods, but they would take out all the vitamin C. This, of course, results in the people being very unhealthy, even though they're eating healthy, which goes to show that having enough of the good stuff is the first priority. Interestingly enough, with all of these changes in the second week, my inner dialogue started to change. With drinking more than enough water and adding lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, my food devil started having a way harder time convincing me that I wanted to eat unhealthy stuff on top of that, just for the sheer amount of stuff I was already eating. Of course, I was not allowed to cut out anything, so in the end, the food devil still always won, because Eric said so. Eric said I had to have this, and all the conversations that I wrote down now ended with, yeah, but Eric said to have it, so we have to have it. And I obliged. I ate all of these healthy foods, and I ate as much of the regular food and the maybe unhealthy foods as I used to. And that was getting kind of tough, especially by the end of the week. My food angel and just myself in general started to get pretty tired of this. And it became more and more apparent that most of the foods that I was eating before just didn't make me feel good. Overall, I took away a lot of learnings from these weeks, learned a lot about my inner dialogue and how food actually makes me feel. So, what's next? I was still holding off the decision to buy the full program, the full 90-day program, because it is a lot of money. But after these 2 weeks, I've become fairly certain that this program can help change the way I approach food, not just for a period, but for the rest of my life. And with food being one of the most important pillars of health, eating right is probably the best investment I can make in myself. So I'm going to continue on for the remaining 76 days. If you want to follow my progress or are interested to hear more about my experience with the full program, then stick around. Green.